Welcome to the Elaborate Topics podcast, where we focus on lab-specific strategies for medical laboratory professionals. We're proud to be the healthcare detectives that work behind the scenes to get the results needed to influence medical decisions. Let's grow together and jump right into the lab.
Welcome back to Elaborate Topics. We are your co-hosts. My name is Stephanie Whitehead, and I'm joined by our host, Tywauna Wilson and Lona Small. And we're so excited for another episode of Elaborate Topics today. If you haven't joined us before, Elaborate Topic is a weekly podcast where we are bringing you messages about leadership and laboratory to help you excel inside and outside of the laboratory environment. And today we're super excited because we're going to be talking about overcoming the challenges that come with leadership. So whether you're a formal leader, a role-based leader, or an informal leader, we want to help you with some of the challenges you might come up and interface with during your day, and how you can overcome those and become a mighty, strong, powerful leader in your areas and in your department. So to start, I mentioned different types of leadership, role-based and informal. And before we really dive deep into what those challenges that are faced on a day-to-day basis are, I want to kind of describe those. And so you understand which pot you might fall into. Some people don't consider themselves leader, and you actually are. So a formal leader would be one that is designated for that role. Sometimes there are organizational charts, but that is going to be defined by your job title. If you're a department leader, a manager, supervisor, lead tech, all the way up to the CEO, this is your job, and this is in your job description, to be a leader and to have some level of responsibility for a portion of the organization. However, in every laboratory, in every environment, there are also informal leaders. And these are people who have a perceived amount of experience and have a good reputation amongst their staff, and therefore, can help with decisions, can help influence decisions that are being made, can help influence the day-to-day mood and culture of an organization. And therefore, they have a responsibility as well to the workflow and to the patient care. Either way, if you're a role-based leader, or if you're an informal leader, challenges arise. Being a leader in itself is a challenge. Having to consistently motivate others, having to ensure that you yourself remain motivated to carry forth the mission and the vision of your area, of your laboratory, so you don't stay stagnated, so you're continuously improving. All of these things come with challenges, and we want to make sure that you have the mentality, you have the mindset to achieve your goals as a leader. As we talk about some of these challenges are tangible, things that you come up with every day, and Tywauna is going to dive into those in just a second. So things like short staffing, lack of resources, regulatory issues, things like that, criticism, things that you can actually put your hands on and that are tangible are one entire different bucket of challenges, but there's an entire other subset of challenges that you might face, and those are internal to you. So things like, stress or frustration or lack of knowledge or insecurity about your role. And those are challenges, like I said, internal to you as a leader, but equally as important for you to deal with so that you can be success. The most important thing to remember as you encounter any of these challenges, whether they be internal or external, is that every challenge is a way for you to really push yourself and really learn about yourself and overcome that challenge and become a better leader. Any challenge that you arise and that you're able to overcome helps you to learn more about you, helps you to learn more about your personality, your traits, and just makes you a better leader overall. Leadership is not a destination. It is certainly a journey, and I'm sure my co-host would agree. But Tywauna, before we go any further, why don't you talk about some of the specific challenges that can come along with being a role-based leader?
Thank you, Stephanie. Yes, there are tons of challenges that can come with being a role-based leader. So, congratulations to you all who are in leadership, formal, documented leadership positions, supervisors, managers, directors, team leaders, coordinators, phlebotomy leaders, and everybody else out there who are leading in our laboratories. You all have taken or undertaken such a huge role. And I know that it can be very difficult some days. I know that it can be a challenge some days. So thank you and congratulations because we need you. We need you to be in those roles. Some of those challenges that you encounter include, as Stephanie said, asked to do more with less. How many times in our laboratories have you been asked to really save the world? And I'm sure with today's environment with COVID and working longer hours, increased test volume, I'm sure that your staffs are working tirelessly. You're working tirelessly as the leader and just trying to keep it all together. People's vacations probably were on hold or canceled, and all of those good things. So there are challenges with just being asked to do more with less and having to manage that as a leader. It can be difficult. You have the pressures to follow the status quo, even when it's not beneficial to your team. So sometimes, depending on if you are in a larger system, there are initiatives that need to be carried out at every facility. And some of those initiatives may not be beneficial to your particular team, but you still need to follow the status quo. It is really difficult when you have facilities that have been standalone and are now part of a larger system. Being able to explain that to your teams, to be able to follow those initiatives can be difficult and challenging, especially as the leader who was used to making maybe all of the decisions, and now you are having to collaborate across multiple facilities. There are barriers with even trying to support your team. I know when you think about the to-do list, and I don't know, I'm a list person. So when I go into the office, I have a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that I'm going to work on. And most days I maybe get to 1 and 2 because something else has come up. A typical day could be I'm going to work on procedures. I'm going to work on bringing in new tests. I'm going to work on doing some research, whatever the case may be. And I may have those three things on the list, but then maybe somebody called in short staff, maybe, instrument is down, one of our high volume instruments. Maybe somebody else has a crisis that's going on. You got clients that are not happy, physicians that are not happy, delays in the lab, something going on in the environment. Maybe you work at a trauma center and now you have a big case that's coming in. So it can be very difficult and overwhelming at times just trying to manage it all, and as the leader, you want to make sure that you feel confident and competent to lead in your role, but it does get challenging sometimes. As I check in with my staff, and I know at one time we were undergoing ownership change, and the staff, because they hadn't dealt with this before, they're like, well, what do you think? Are we safe, if you will? Is everything going to be okay? And as a leader, it's up to us. We kind of dictate the environment that happens. And so, even though there were times that things weren't certain and I wasn't exactly sure how they were going to work out, the staff was counting on me not to panic. They were counting on me to be that calming force while they were all over the place. So sometimes when you have those things that comes up and you're trying to support your team, there are barriers that arise. But in that particular situation, I try to keep cool because the team one of the comments that one of the staff members said is, well, if you're not worried, then I'm not worried about it. And so as leaders, sometimes we have to be the calming force on our teams. Sometimes challenges arrive when you have inadequate training to be in the role that you're in. How many times in your lab has somebody been promoted from within? They were an all-star tech, and then they moved up into a leadership role, management, supervisor, and now they went from having, day-to-day technical responsibilities, performing the tests and meeting turnaround times, to now I need to be a coach. I need to be a mentor. I need to know budgets. And I don't know those things. I've not been trained on those things. Now you want me to discipline people? So those are some challenges too that come about being, in a formal role. I can remember my very first role at top pediatric facility, and I had a lot of documented leadership experience outside of the workplace. But when I stepped into that supervisory role, it was my first supervisory role in the laboratory. So I transitioned from the bench to being a supervisor in an environment where the growth was crazy. We had just opened up another hospital facility. We were short staffed. We had new tests. I mean, it was just crazy. And not to mention, we were getting ready for a CAP inspection. I had people that were calling in. I had people that were, that I had to have those difficult conversations, and some of them I was not ready to have. They train you in school. I mean, I have a degree, but that's not hitting on anything when it comes to dealing with people and having to have those conversations. So those are some challenges that you will encounter as a role-based leader, of having adequate training to even do your job. Inadequate support from administration. Again, everybody's on the busy train, and sometimes that busy train is not headed in the same direction. And so, you as maybe a middle manager, you're looking for support from administration or from the hospital, and sometimes you might not feel as if they are an advocate for the laboratory. Sometimes, we are the unseen heroes, the unseen detectives. They miss us if we're not there, but sometimes it's like, well, go to bat for us the same way you would miss us if we weren't there performing the test. And so you do have those challenges from administration at times, where it seems like the hospital may have a different direction, and the lab may or may not be at the table. Also, inadequate support from the team. And this happens in laboratories near and far here in the United States and abroad. It happens with poor staff engagement and staff morale, especially if the environment is rapidly changing. You definitely have staff engagement and morale issues. Sometimes you have those people who are acting out in the environment. They are being disruptors and not disrupting in a positive way, but it seems like they are just being in the environment and being roadblocks. They really are not satisfied with their role, but they don't want to go anywhere else. So now that creates some challenges. And as a manager or leader or supervisor, it's that whole 80-20, and you don't want to get to where you're spending all of your time or 80% of your time on the one or two people that might be causing issues. And then you have the rest of the people, your high performers, in which you're not giving them any kind of attention at all. And so, those start to be some challenges that leaders have, especially new leaders. They run into that. Result, you have distrust. Once you move over to the management side, to the leadership side, then you don't get the same kind of trust. Is some of those conversations your staff might not be open and willing to talk with you about, because it's almost like, well, we are on the bench, we're frontline, and depending on what laboratory you're in, I have staff who say, well, I'm on the front line. I'm just, I'm just a little peon. Actually, nobody's just. We need everybody, and everybody plays a crucial role, not being a little peon. But her words, not mine. Say I'm just a little, peon. You all are you all make all the decisions. So sometimes, especially depending on the culture of your facility, of your laboratory, that could play a part into it. The culture, maybe people who were in leadership before, it creates challenges. It takes a while to change a culture. It's not impossible, but it does take a while to change one, especially if the leader made all of this decisions, maybe didn't empower their people. And sometimes, it takes a while to just build that trust so that people feel comfortable coming to their leaders. So those are challenges as well. And then sometimes the overall mission and vision, it just isn't quite complete or clear. Sometimes you have all these goals and you see our strategy, or maybe you don't see it. When you are working on the bench, sometimes you're not in the meetings, and you feel like you are not sure why your lab is doing what it's doing. This could happen for a variety of reasons, especially I find that when the environment is rapidly changing, or there are so many initiatives, so many projects, that as a staff member, it's difficult to kind of keep track of like what are we doing now? What is our goal? How are we going to get there? What's like every day I come in and there's something new, there's something different. And as managers, as leaders, as supervisors, it's important that we have clear and open communication. And I know it's difficult when you have so many other competing projects and priorities. So all of those things are challenges for the role-based leader. It's that balance. Especially if you transition from peer to lead. So maybe you were peers in your laboratory and now you're the leader. So, what can be discussed with the staff at what time, so that you're giving them information that's complete. You don't want to make it seem like you're hiding anything. But having that balance can sometimes be tricky. Or if I was peers and me and a person that I worked side by side with good friends, now I'm their manager, I don't want to seem like I'm showing favoritism or anything like that either. So being a role-based leader is definitely has its challenges. It is very rewarding, but it does have its challenges. I know that Lona has some insight into the informal leaders, because we're all leaders in our laboratory. But Lona's going to talk a little bit more about the informal leader challenges.
Hi, everybody. So I know that Stephanie kind of defined leadership as not only the role-based leadership, but also informal leaders. And it's in terms of being a leader, it's important to understand that a leader actually influences people. So if you're in any position to influence someone, you are a leader, because basically you're influencing others to follow your lead, to follow the things that you'd want them to do. And hopefully you're leading in a positive way, because you could lead in a negative way also. So the informal leaders are actually the leaders who are not on paper. You're not the supervisor or the lead or the manager, but yet you're leading in a way. And you could be leading in your workplace, you could be leading at home, you could be leading outside. But once you can influence others and you have that influence on others, then you're regarded as a leader. And so some of the challenges that I see with informal leaders, one of the first thing is being aware that you're actually a leader. Because many informal leaders, they're not aware that they're actually influencing others. And sometimes many times it could turn out to be a negative. So if you're an informal leader in the workplace, you may find some people who are informal leaders and they're leading people in a negative way, and they're not aware that people are making decisions based on either things that they may say or things that they may do. So it's so important to realize that leader. So just being aware that you're a leader is going to be so important. Just being aware that you can influence others is going to be important, because you want to make sure that once you're influencing in a positive way. The next challenge is the acceptance, as I said. Many times you may be have positive influence on your team, and you may be able to help your team in a lot of ways that you may not even need your supervisor or manager to be worrying about some of the things that you could help with. So if you're not accepted by leadership, then that becomes a challenge, because there are so many things that you probably could be helping with. Then the leader will not accept you to lead. Then, of course, then there's going to be more work on the leader in that way, in the formal leader. So not being accepted could affect you as an informal leader, of feeling rejected, and it can affect your team who look to you to help. Sometimes you're just there as that technical expert, and people may come to you for help. And if whatever you say is not accepted, then of course that can cause confusion. The next thing, again, as a challenge, as I see, is that empowerment. We talk about being accepted, but if you're not empowered to make decisions, so first you're not accepted, and then even though you may have solutions to some of the issues, you may not be empowered by leadership to make decisions. And so not being empowered to make decisions, a lot of things will go by the wayside, because there's some decisions that have to be made immediately. You, say, for instance, may see a QC that fail, or there's a issue with with instrument, and you probably can call maintenance. You can set up people coming in. There's just so many things that you can do, because naturally you're a leader. And if you're not empowered to make these decisions, then it can cause a lot of problem with flow, cause a lot of problem with decision making. So that becomes a problem. Another thing I find that I see with informal leaders is that jealousy that takes place among peers. Sometimes because you're probably good at speaking up, and maybe your peers are just as talented, but you may choose to make decisions that would be better for your team. As an informal leader, there could be jealousy among your peers where they're like, well, you're not my supervisor. You don't tell me what to do. So that kind of jealousy could be a barrier in making good decisions for your team, or supporting your supervisor. Whenever there's jealousy among peers, then of course that's a problem. So another thing that I think of too, as a informal leader, because there could be deterrent from maybe your peers or maybe the formal leader, that could cause you not to have the courage. That could cause you not to have the courage to help. So, or you may just be insecure because you don't want to be rebuffed. So you may not have the courage to help. So these are some of the things that I either notice from that scenarios with informal leaders. One thing that I also find too is that people may place leaders in that position that, say, for instance, you don't have a team. You may be a role-based leader, but you may not have a team. And in many of those situations, you may be seen by either people who who probably have to look to you for direction, or even people who have roles and have a team. They may see you as, why are you telling me what to do? So, that can cause a lot of challenges, say for instance, you're a specialist, you're a technical specialist, and that's a role, but people may not recognize you in that sense. So you as a technical specialist may be trying to help out, and people may reject some of the things that you have to say. So yes, so these are a lot of different challenges, but the good thing about it is that we're going to discuss ways in which you can overcome some of these challenges and be successful in your either your role as a leader or as an informal leader, how you can be successful in that. So I think we're going to maybe Stephanie, you want to go ahead to talk about some of those solutions or some of the things that we can do?
Well, thank you, Anna. That's a great list of challenges that everybody faces today. But like we said, this podcast, this platform is about giving you tools and tips that you need to be successful in and outside of the laboratory. So we don't want to just kind of go over everything that everybody's feeling. Sometimes it is good to have therapy. We did get a good chance to vent. But we also want to give you a chance to understand from our perspective. We are 3 successful business women who have many years in the laboratory field, in the laboratory profession, some of the ways that we have found to overcome the challenges that we've been dealing with. In my current role, I am the director of a large trauma laboratory, inpatient and outpatient. And so one of the ways that I've learned to overcome some of these challenges that we've mentioned in the role-based position that I have is practice and experience. Like I said before, leadership is not a destination, it's a journey. And so when things come up, just like Tywauna mentioned, many people will comment on my demeanor, and they may say, Stephanie, you're so calm. You're so laid back right now. Like, what? Why? What is going on? And my response is always, that's what you pay me to do. You're not paying me to run around with my hair caught on fire. You're not paying me to sit in my office and cry and, be huddled up in a corner. Right now I am on the clock getting a paycheck, and my job in this role is to find a solution, is to think through this situation and find a way to guide my team through the situation. And so, that's what you pay me to do. But that didn't just come out of the box like that. That came from being in different meetings over and over again. It came through being in situations over and over again. It came with dealing with low performing employees over and over again. And after a while, you began to build a tolerance. And some of the things that may have affected you negatively or may have caused you a lot of stress or frustration when you first started out being a leader, because you've built that level of tolerance, because you have that level of experience as a leader behind you, you're able to handle those situations as you continue on in the years of management a lot more smoothly. So I would say definitely a lot of practice and experience. Try to always be proactive. In every situation, regardless of what the situation is, there's always something you can do. Even if it's just communicating to your team, this is a situation. I don't know what's going to happen next. As soon as I have more information, I'll be sure to update you all. I don't want you to worry because our leaders are working hard on your behalf. Even if you just simply do that, that is doing something. Far too many times, and I'm sure you ladies and you all listening have worked for people that maybe try to sweep things under the rug, or you hear about updates through rumors and whispers through the department. And there's just a reluctance to have that transparent and open communication with the team. And so I would say that, always try to be as proactive as possible and understand that regardless of how small your action is, you can always do something in every situation. Doing this really increases your tolerance. I used the example before about working out, because during our quarantine, I had laxed on my health and wellness and started back working out. And once I did, boy, was I sore. And boy, was, some of the smallest exercises had me sore in all kinds of places. But the more you exercise, the more stamina you build, the more endurance you build, you're able to lift heavier weights. And really, it's the same thing with leadership. The longer you do this role that you're in, whether it's informal or formal, the more you're able to take, the more you're able to endure, the more you're able to multitask, the quicker you're able to think critically on your feet. And so you become better over the years. It doesn't happen overnight, but it does become better. I would also say never be afraid to deal with a challenging situation or a conflict. And this is another thing that I had to learn. It wasn't easy for me, and it took very many years for me, and I'm still not perfect at it. I told the ladies that the first time I had to counsel a low performer, and unfortunately this counseling led to her termination from employment with our organization. And so when I had to communicate that we would be separating her from the organization, we would be firing her that day, she was crying, I was crying, we both was crying. And then she came back the next day because she didn't get the clear message that she was fired. And so that was because I was not confident in having difficult conversations with people. And that was something that I had to work on, and I had to acknowledge within myself. And I had to identify so I could become better at it. And now, one of the things that I think I do very well is being able to identify and acknowledge a difficult conversation coming and be transparent about that conversation and call it out. Because far too many times, I think sometimes leaders try to sweep it under the rug or ignore it. And they feel like, if I don't talk about it, maybe it'll go away. If that person who is a problem in my department, I just ignore them. Or that person who's gossiping and tearing down the team, if I just ignore them because they're a good tech, then it'll go away, and it doesn't. You have to call those things out, and you have to be able to address those things, or else they become bigger. When I talked earlier about those internal conflicts, those things that really lie within you, like fear and insecurity, perhaps impatience, or even procrastination, one of the best things you can do to get over that is realize that leaders are human. So you are human. I haven't told you anything that you didn't know there. So that's not really crazy news. But realize that, as a leader, you have the same failures, and you have the same problems, and you have the same struggles as your team members do. And having that level of self-awareness to recognize those things and then to attack them doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect at them, but recognize I'm the kind of person who procrastinates. So I need to make a list, I need to prioritize, and I need to force myself, block out time on my calendar to get these things done. I'm the kind of person, maybe I said that because I was insecure, or maybe I said that because I was fearful. Recognize those things in yourself, maybe find you an accountability partner. Tywauna, do you have anything you want to add? What do you think?
Yeah, I think you gave some great tips. You're right. You get better with practice, and experience. Those difficult conversations, the only way you get better and get good at them is that you got to have them. The only way you get good and comfortable, as comfortable as you're going to get with disciplinary actions or conflict, is if you have to deal with it. That's just par for the course. So you gave great insight there. We should always subscribe to a never stop learning mentality. In order to be a leader of teams and be able to inspire and motivate and encourage our teams, we have to be able to inspire and motivate ourselves and encourage ourselves. We have to participate in our own training and our own personal growth. It really does start with you. So if you can't lead yourself, it's going to be very difficult to be able to lead other people. And so being able to overcome those challenges starts with participating in trainings, whether that's master classes or webinars, or any other kind of training programs. Reading books. Books are very helpful. And don't be afraid to read books or attend trainings or classes that are outside of your particular niche. And what I mean by that is So my areas of the laboratory are chemistry and toxicology. And so I'm in all things chemistry, toxicology, and then of course quality. But don't be afraid to attend seminars that is in regard to hematology. Don't be afraid to attend seminars that's in regards to marketing, or something that's totally out of your niche, because all of those, gaining those different skills, all of those add to who you are. All of those add to your portfolio, so that you never know when something comes up. It's like, oh, I attended a class on that. I understand kind of why, nurses think the way they do, because I went to a seminar that was really catered to nurses, but I found it interesting. And so those are ways that we want to keep ourselves prepared, keep ourselves trained. Of course, I'm big on mentorship and coaching. Mentorship and coaching are two different things. I think you need both in your life at some point or another to be able to really excel, because with mentoring, you are able to capitalize off of the expertise of somebody else who doesn't want to shorten their learning curve there. So you definitely want to get you a mentor, and that mentor could be somebody inside of the laboratory or outside of the laboratory, or both. I will definitely recommend having a lab-based mentor, because they know our stuff. They know our lingo, they know our industry, they know our profession. But I also think it's very important to have mentors in other spaces, so that you can get some insight into what they, how they view things. Coaches, invest in a coach. That is going to cost an investment, but anything worthwhile is worth investing in. Free education will only get you so far, right? So in order to get to the next level, you're going to have to make an investment in yourself, especially if you are not getting that support from administration, if you're not getting that support from your boss. You're going to have to find that expertise somewhere. So never stop learning, participate in training. And if you are a member of ASCP, I am plugging ASCP because the annual meeting is virtual, right? It's virtual and it's coming up. And if you are a member, so if you paid your yearly membership fee, it is free. So that's an opportunity to meet and network with other professionals. They will have all kind of courses, and that, and in that, I'm challenging you to be able to go and maybe go to a workshop that was based or made for the residents, or maybe was made for the pathologist, just to get insight. They will have networking there, so it's always good to network with other professionals that are doing the same thing you're doing and doing different things that you're doing. That's why I love this platform and I love this podcast with my co-hosts, because we're in all different places. I'm in Ohio, Stephanie's in Texas, Lona's in Maryland, and to be able to bring that expertise, we all work in different types of laboratories. So to be able to bring that different type of expertise together and build and learn from these ladies have just been awesome for my own journey. And so I challenge you to be able to do the same, so that you can continue to overcome some of those challenges that you might have as a role-based leader or as an informal leader, so that when you do move into a role-based position, you're ready, you're equipped, you're prepared, and you have subscribed to lifelong learning, which is going to benefit you personally and professionally, as well as your team. Lona, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, definitely. And I really, what both Stephanie and yourself, Tywauna, were saying about preparation and about the challenges and actually experiencing leadership is going to be so important to overcome some of these challenges. And I know you touched on what I wanted to talk about is this whole self-awareness. And I know Stephanie touched on it a little bit and Tywauna touched on it a little bit. But when you're thinking of being a leader, one of the first things you start thinking about is how prepared are you? That whole self-awareness, that whole preparation for yourself is going to be so important. So one thing Stephanie spoke about was knowing yourself. But one thing I'm going to talk about is knowing your triggers, because a lot of the challenges that we face sometimes could trigger certain reactions in us. And so it's so important to understand our triggers. And because we understand how we may respond to different situations, it's good to make preparation ahead of time. For me, I had an experience a few days ago where for me, my trigger could be, I could be in a meeting and I'm very passionate about safety, patient safety and quality. And many times I see people would kind of brush it aside, or they may say that's just checking the box and not really understanding the why behind things. And I know that could be a trigger for me to get into a whole lecture. And so if I'm not prepared, that look, once I hear that, instead of starting telling people or going into a lecture about the why, maybe it's best to ask questions and understand where they're coming from. And based on that, we could have a conversation and clarify things. So it's going to be important to understand your trigger. So that's kind of one example for me. Another thing that would be helpful, and this is all about self-awareness, is to understand your own personal values. And when you understand your personal values, what are the things that I really care about? It's not so easy to be swayed by different situations and different scenarios where you're like, okay, this person wants me to do this, so I'm going to do it. Or this person, and then I'm mad about it. Or this person is doing this, so I'm going to react or respond. So when you understand your values, say, for instance, I care about respect for my peers, or I care about patient safety. So therefore, if I'm in a situation where there's patient safety, that's going to be the priority. And I'm not just going to react or respond because somebody else is doing something and I want to please them. So when you're clear about your personal values, that's going to be really helpful when it comes to making decisions. And it's going to be helpful when how you respond to different situations. I remember making a quote on LinkedIn, and I said that the environment can affect your mindset, and your mindset can also affect your environment. Depending on how you're feeling, you could create that environment. So you have to make a choice. What is it that will it be your mindset that will affect your environment? And I would challenge people to first create that mindset. So that's personal self-care. Create that mindset that will affect the environment that you'd want, and don't allow the environment to affect your mindset. So I know Stephanie kind of talked a little bit about exercise, and that's self-care. So self-care, when you do things like exercise, you're actually creating those good hormones, that endorphins, or so it's good to take care of yourself. So you put yourself in a position that when you're dealing with your team or you're dealing with people, you're already in a position that will be able to respond in a positive way. And yes, there's a lot of challenges as we talk about, and it's not like we're saying that they don't exist, because we have to go through these challenges. A lot of it is how are you going to respond? So when you start taking care of yourself, when you're exercising, you're producing these positive hormones. So that's creating a happy mood. Another thing when it comes to self-care could be meditation. Meditation helps with stress. So you can prepare yourself even before you put yourself in certain environment. So you're actually preparing the way you're going to respond and how you're reacting to situation. And while I'm talking about preparing yourself and self-care, another thing to talk about is setting intentions. And so we know how we can be thrown off. Sometimes we can react because, you don't know what you're going to go into. So if, say, for instance, in the mornings, you could set intentions and you could say, how do I want to respond if this happened? How do I want to respond if I walk in and there are 5 call outs? How do I want to respond if I walk in and the same disruptor start acting up? So you're not put in a place where you are reactive. So you're preparing yourself ahead of time. You're setting an intention of how do you want to respond? All of this is part of self-care.
Overall, thank you guys for listening today. We hope we gave you guys some gems that you could use, whether you're an informal leader or a role-based leader, like we mentioned before. In summary, we know that you face challenges every day. We know that externally, you may not have all support, all the staff, all the resources you need. We know you may not feel particularly prepared for your role. We know that you may have insecurities about yourself in that role. But no, particularly right now with COVID-19, the pandemic, everything going on in our nation, that we need you, and healthcare needs you, and the laboratory profession needs you. So right now there is so many benefits and so much growth that comes from you stepping out, believing in yourself, understanding yourself, willing to bet on yourself, trusting yourself, and becoming the leader and continuing to grow in your leadership journey. We hope that we've helped you today. If you have any questions or if you would like any other advice, please reach out to us. We hope to connect with you at the ASCP virtual conference, where Tywauna, Lona, and myself will all be working as professional mentors. And we hope that we can connect with you. And until then, I'll let Tywauna take us home.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Stephanie and Lona. I really appreciated our discussion for today. I think it was an awesome discussion. Lona, did you have anything to add?
I think it's really great that for leaders, I think it's so beneficial that even though we may go through some of these challenges and we may know that we can overcome, there are usually a lot of benefits, especially like growth. When you think about it, there are personal growth, there are opportunities for career growth. So don't shy away from leadership. Don't shy away, even if you're an informal leader, because even though there are challenges, just like how there are always challenges in life, when you think about it, you're actually moving over on the other side, a better person, a person who have grown as a leader and as a person.
Well said. I think that is great. So even though leadership poses many challenges, like we've heard, there are so many benefits, and really you do become a better person because of it. And it's important to know before growth comes challenges. It is overcoming these challenges that we create opportunities and growth. So thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Elaborate Topics with your hosts, Tywauna Wilson, Stephanie Whitehead, and Lona Small. If you like what you heard today, you can listen to previous shows at directimpactbroadcasting.com, or you can listen to it on your favorite podcast platform. And I have looked at the data, and it looks like you all really love Apple Podcasts. So thank you, all of the Apple people, for listening to us on that platform. We know that we have global listeners, which is very exciting. So make sure you share it with a friend, share it with a colleague, share it with anybody who could benefit from these topics. Remember to send us an email at elaboratetopics@directimpactbroadcasting.com to learn more about this topic or other topics, or to be a guest on the show. Tune in next week to hear about another amazing episode. and check us out.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Elaborate Topics, where your hosts discussed relevant strategies for laboratory professionals. Please subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and listen to us on directimpactbroadcasting.com. Stay tuned for another episode with information you can use to excel in your laboratory career.